Exodus 34, 1 through 35. Devotional focus verse. And the Lord said unto Moses, Write thou these words, for after the tenor of these words I have made a covenant with thee and with Israel. Exodus 34:27. The word covenant has a stronger connotation than the word promise. Webster's dictionary says a covenant is a formal, solemn, and binding agreement. Keeping a covenant means upholding it even in the difficult times. Samuel and Linda Kwan are an example of a couple who faithfully kept their marriage covenant. They were Christians who married in China and had 3 children. Samuel was the chief officer on a merchant ship that came to the Portland, Oregon harbor, and he attended services at our church. In the 1960s, not long after crossing the Columbia River bar into the Pacific Ocean, an engine room technician on the ship found what proved to be a bomb that had been planted on the ship by someone hoping for an insurance claim. The technician brought the bomb to the deck, and several men, including the captain, stood around it. Samuel cautioned the men to leave the object alone, but someone did not heed. The bomb exploded, and several men were killed, including the captain. Samuel was blinded in the explosion, and the other senior officers were all injured or killed. In spite of his injury, Samuel instructed the bosun, or petty officer, through the process of bringing the ship back toward the coastline of the United States, where the Coast Guard could be reached to come and help. Ashore, Samuel was hospitalized and began treatment and rehabilitation. In the process, he was granted permanent residency in the United States, and God worked it out for his family to immigrate also. Linda came with their children and stood by Samuel through all the adjustments of coping with his blindness and also acclimating to life in a new country. Linda had been trained in nursing, and in time, Samuel was trained to be an X-ray technician. Both worked for years in a local hospital. Then, in the 1980s, Linda began to show signs of Alzheimer's disease. Samuel faithfully cared for her until it became obvious that she needed 24-hour supervision. She was admitted to a care facility where Samuel's face became familiar to the staff. He went to visit and help with her care every day until she passed away. Samuel and Linda Kwan were exemplary in staying true to their marriage covenant through many difficulties. Yet God is far more reliable than any human being. When He says something, we can count on it happening 100% of the time. Moses had developed a close relationship with God, and they communicated freely with one another. In today's focus verse, God told Moses that He would make a covenant with Moses and the children of Israel. Imagine the awesomeness of entering into a covenant with God Himself. God's promises were not just for the people in biblical history. His Word is full of promises that apply to us today, among them the great covenant that He will give us eternal life. However, we must choose to be recipients of His conditional covenant by submitting to His will and establishing a close personal relationship with Him. Background information. This text describes how God renewed His covenant with the children of Israel. The first tables of stone, on which God Himself had inscribed the 10 Commandments, were broken when Moses came down from Mount Sinai and saw the children of Israel worshiping a golden calf. In verses 1 through 4 of this chapter, God gave instructions to Moses to hew or carve out 2 new tables of stone. God promised to rewrite the commandments upon them. Moses was also commanded to go up into the mountain by himself, and he carefully followed God's directions. Verses 5 through 9 tell the fulfillment of God's promise to make His goodness pass before Moses. See Exodus 33:19 through 23. God came in the cloud and declared that he was merciful and gracious, long-suffering, and abundant in goodness and truth. Moses' response was to bow his head in worship and to entreat God for his continued presence and forgiveness. In verse 10, God responded by renewing his covenant with the children of Israel and promising to drive out the inhabitants of the promised land. Then he warned that the people were to keep themselves separate from the inhabitants of the land, not to worship their idols or to intermarry. God had made a covenant with the children of Israel, and they were not to make covenants with the people about them. God restated many of his instructions, including those for 3 annual feasts and the Sabbath, and he promised protection as the people obeyed. After Moses spent another 40 days with God, he returned to the people with a brightly shining face. He had observed God's glory and spent time in his presence, and the glory showed on his countenance. Conclusion. A close personal relationship with God is something we want to develop and maintain throughout our lives.
Exodus chapter 34. And the Lord said unto Moses, Hew thee 2 tables of stone like unto the first, and I will write upon these tables the words that were in the first tables, which thou breakest. And be ready in the morning, and come up in the morning unto Mount Sinai, and present thyself there to me in the top of the mount. And no man shall come up with thee, neither let any man be seen throughout all the mount, neither let the flocks nor herds feed before that mount. And he hewed 2 tables of stone like unto the first, and Moses rose up early in the morning, and went up unto Mount Sinai, as the Lord had commanded him, and took in his hand the 2 tables of stone. And the Lord descended in the cloud, and stood with him there, and proclaimed the name of the Lord. And the Lord passed by before him, and proclaimed, the Lord God, merciful and gracious, long-suffering, and abundant in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, and that will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, and upon the children's children, unto the 3rd and to the 4th generation. And Moses made haste, and bowed his head toward the earth, and worshipped. And he said, If now I have found grace in thy sight, O Lord, let my Lord, I pray thee, go among us, for it is a stiff-necked people, and pardon our iniquity and our sin, and take us for thine inheritance. And he said, Behold, I make a covenant, before all thy people I will do marvels, such as have not been done in all the earth, nor in any nation, and all the people among which thou art shall see the work of the Lord, for it is a terrible thing that I will do with thee. Observe thou that which I command thee this day. Behold, I drive out before thee the Amorite, and the Canaanite, and the Hittite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite. Take heed to thyself, lest thou make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land whither thou goest, lest it be for a snare in the midst of thee. But ye shall destroy their altars, break their images, and cut down their groves. For thou shalt worship no other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. Lest thou make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, and they go a-whoring after their gods, and do sacrifice unto their gods, and one call thee, and thou eat of his sacrifice. And thou take of their daughters unto thy sons, and their daughters go a-whoring after their gods, and make thy sons go a-whoring after their gods. Thou shalt make thee no molten gods. The feast of unleavened bread shalt thou keep. 7 days thou shalt eat unleavened bread, as I commanded thee, in the time of the month Abib, for in the month Abib thou camest out from Egypt. All that openeth the matrix is mine, and every firstling among thy cattle, whether ox or sheep, that is male. But the firstling of an ass thou shalt redeem with a lamb, and if thou redeem him not, then shalt thou break his neck. All the firstborn of thy sons thou shalt redeem. And none shall appear before me empty. 6 days thou shalt work, but on the 7th day thou shalt rest, in earing time and in harvest thou shalt rest. And thou shalt observe the feast of weeks, of the firstfruits of wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering at the year's end. Thrice in the year shall all your men children appear before the Lord God, the God of Israel. For I will cast out the nations before thee, and enlarge thy borders, neither shall any man desire thy land, when thou shalt go up to appear before the Lord thy God thrice in the year. Thou shalt not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leaven, neither shall the sacrifice of the feast of the Passover be left unto the morning. The first of the firstfruits of thy land thou shalt bring unto the house of the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not see the kid in his mother's milk. And the Lord said unto Moses, Write thou these words, for after the tenor of these words I have made a covenant with thee and with Israel. And he was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights, he did neither eat bread, nor drink water. And he wrote upon the tables the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments. And it came to pass, when Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tables of testimony in Moses' hand, when he came down from the mount, that Moses wist not that the skin of his face shone while he talked with him. And when Aaron and all the children of Israel saw Moses, behold, the skin of his face shone, and they were afraid to come nigh him. And Moses called unto them, and Aaron and all the rulers of the congregation returned unto him, and Moses talked with them. And afterward all the children of Israel came nigh, and he gave them in commandment all that the Lord had spoken with him in Mount Sinai. Until Moses had done speaking with them, he put a veil on his face. But when Moses went in before the Lord to speak with him, he took the veil off, until he came out. And he came out, and spake unto the children of Israel that which he was commanded. And the children of Israel saw the face of Moses, that the skin of Moses' face shone, and Moses put the veil upon his face again, until he went in to speak with him.